What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and I'm doing something I haven't done, which is doing a recap of a show that's old. We'll see how this goes, but I really want to talk about Black Mirror. Never watched it before until now. Season 7 dropped recently, and I was at a point where I was like, do I start with Season 7 or do I actually go back and watch Season 1? Oddly enough, Netflix started me sort of in the middle when I originally clicked play, which I thought was weird. So I was literally given that option of, well, now I have to choose. Do I click season 1, episode 1, or season 7, episode 1? So I chose season 1, episode 1. So this is my recap review of the National Anthem, which aired during the Obama administration. That's how old this episode is. And it feels it too. So click like and subscribe. And if you like this kind of content and you think that I should continue doing thoughts on Black Mirror, let me know, because there are a lot of episodes here to break down. And if no one's listening or no one's watching, if there are no likes, no comments, what am I doing? So, National Anthem. One of the things that's uniquely interesting about Black Mirror is that it's a UK show. So it's coming from a British perspective initially. So Rory Kinnear stars in this first episode. He solid character actor. He's been in a bunch of things. You would know him. IMDb him. He's been in a bunch of things. I don't know where you know him from. He's not one of those instantly recognizable names and faces. But, well, he's more of a recognizable face than he is a name, I guess. I don't know. Character actors, right? So this is a bold episode to start a series on, because it is asking the audience to accept a certain thing and that a certain thing should play out a certain way. I've heard some other people talk about this. I kind of agree and disagree with some of the thoughts. I get what they're saying, but also I think it's very privileged in its approach and what it's trying to dissect and what it's trying to say, because it is, once again, coming from a very Brit perspective. It's not a world perspective, nor is it an American perspective. So I try to think about 2011 or 2012 or whatever this came out. And I mean, this predates Trump. This predates it's COVID. I mean, this predates a lot of things. So like, a lot of things haven't happened yet. So you have to kind of think about like where this is coming from. And the episode centers around the Prime Minister of Britain, which is Rory Kinnear's character, who is presented with a dilemma. This princess has been kidnapped. She's been taken, but she's also the princess that everybody loves. And all of the Brits love her, and very popular. And she's been taken hostage, and he's been made aware of it. And the people who have taken her hostage have one simple request: like a pig on live television, which sounds like we're headed into a joke, but we're really not. We're headed into a legitimate quandary of, will he or won't he, should he or shouldn't he? And you kind of watch Rory Kinnear spiral, much like anyone would, I think, if they were asked to do this, or if they were even in a situation where they were trying to navigate a hostage crisis. I'm not even sure that the British PM is supposed to be the person navigating a hostage crisis like this, but I feel like there are probably, having seen a lot of shows that keep referencing things like MI6, there has to be some sort of a secret agency that needs to come in here and take over and just sort of inform the prime minister on an as needed basis to try to get the princess back. Because they didn't just take like a random citizen or a popular British icon star, and it took a princess. So I kind of question if this is actually how it would happen or transpire, but let's go with it. So he's kind of calling the shots. His initial reaction is to try to stop the news from airing it, but he forgot we live in a social media world. So shit hits YouTube and Facebook, and things go viral really quickly, and you can't really do anything like shut down the news and the radio now. That's not a thing. So even though he has the ability to do it, it doesn't really do much for him. So as slowly as it progresses, he's kind of grasping at straws, clearly because he doesn't want to do it, because who could blame him? Yeah, wouldn't we be more concerned if he wanted to do it, or like if he hopped to it and was like, "Give me that pig, I'll take one for the team." Like, and this was like a 10-minute episode. Like, let's just let's talk about that for a second. So let's say he did get the ransom demand, and he grabbed a pig and called the news crew, and it was over in 10 minutes. Would we be concerned for another way, in another direction? Like, at what point, at what point is it appropriate for him to, like, you know, how much time should he take to consider? Because I know essentially it's not really about fucking the pig. It's really about trusting our leaders to do the right thing, what they're willing to hide, what they're willing to do to try to get out of things, and sort of this buck stops here mentality. And I've heard people talk about this idea that, um, that politicians, that this episode deals a lot with the way that we uh, trust or don't distrust our politicians through the acts and the things that they say and do, and mistakes that they make and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, which is a uniquely British experience and also a very early 2010s experience, I guess, for them. So it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know if this show ages well or if it even transports perfectly outside of the UK. Because from my perspective, over here, we just have a thing where we just go fake news and shut things down immediately. Plus, we also have, and even in 2011, 2012, we had sort of already perspective news instead of just news. So you already sort of, we had already gotten to the point where we had allowed our news sources to not really become news anymore and to blur the line so that people didn't know whether or not they were actually getting news anymore versus an opinion. It's a problem that we still have in America where people can't discern whether or not they're getting an opinion or whether or not they're getting fact. And arguably, news sources are not doing anything to help it. They all have opinion people who are all, masquerading as news journalists, but really they have hour-long programs that are opinion-based and not news-based. They're not fact-based. So, and they're all driven and they all sort of live in this mold or module. And then we have blogs and we have people. It's like, did they fact check? Who knows? Who knows? We have YouTubers. Who knows if they fact checked? Podcasters. We have no idea. Message boards. There's so many different ways that people get their news, and they were still getting them that way in 2011. There were still blogs. Podcasting wasn't nearly what it is today and not really a thing, so I can't really say that's true, but YouTube was around. There were message boards. I'm sure there was some equivalent of QAnon back in 2011 or 2012. So people were still getting their questionable news and their questionable facts and blurring opinion with fact. So it's not so much about whether or not you trust your politician or not. It's whether or not you can even trust the story at all. The reason why National Anthem doesn't work today is because not only would we be saying fake news, but we would be talking about deep fakes. We would be talking about AI. There would be a question of whether or not any of this was ever real to begin with. We have such a distrust of everything. And this is not new. For years, long before there was ever Trump, there were people who believed Stanley Kubrick filmed the moon landing. So conspiracy theorists have been blossoming for years, pushing ideas. It's just the internet allowed them to find a way to connect to each other. And suddenly that stuff became reality. That stuff became fact. They were able to source each other in ways that made it sound like, well, it must be true because this person says that this person said it. Well, where did that person get it from? Well, I don't know. If you can start sourcing other conspiracy theorists for your thing, then you sort of create this vicious circle. Sort of like on watching an episode of Catfish, where you find out the person has this elaborate thing where they are all of the family members, even though you've been talking to what you think is your girlfriend, and that they have that they live with their mom and dad and they have a brother, and then you're like, oh my God, none of that is real. And they were all of those people at the same time. That's kind of what the internet has allowed us to do, is to uh, misinform people and to disillusion and to sow the distrust. So I don't think quite what some other people have read into this, or what Black Mirror is trying to suggest, that it's all on the prime minister. As a matter of fact, I think there's something to be said for the fact that we always hear more so in movies than in actual situations, that we don't negotiate with terrorists. It's very like a cinematic thing. But it also is a real thing, because the minute that you do, you kind of open yourself up to well, why not try it again? Let's see how much we can get out. You kind of open yourself up to the next group that says, and sure, it's something as silly as fucking a pig, but what if Kenya's prime minister had been told to kill somebody on live television, where he had to pick somebody to die for the princess? See, they picked something very sort of gross, and also I guess non harmful, except to the pig who's getting violated. They picked something like that because they were like, well, it's just this thing and nobody will die. But what if it was somebody that died? What if it was a 1-for-1 solution and then you had to choose somebody else? Then is it the prime minister's fault for wanting to dodge that and try to bury that and trying to hide that from? Or is it simply because the request is embarrassing and gross and technically illegal, because bestiality is illegal? So he almost has to pardon himself for him to ever do the act. So it opens up questions about that too, about legality. I'm assuming it's illegal in UK. I don't technically know UK law. Maybe fucking pigs is legal. I don't know. Maybe that's why they picked the pig, is because there's a loophole. Who knows? So I kind of see it differently. And I think in 2011, I would have seen it differently too. Instead of just assuming that the prime minister should take one for the team, as public opinion sways against his favor, due in part to the way that he's handling the situation, but also he's handling a very unique situation, which is the fact that the princess has been taken by some terrorist organization. So he has to navigate that as well, which I'm also arguing is that really what he does as prime minister, with very little help, presumably, from any sort of actual intelligence services? I feel like this should have taken over, and we should have had, if this was American, we'd have, the CIA and FBI would be all over it, and they would just be informing the president. If this was real life right now in 2025, I don't like the guy, but if this was the same situation, I don't know who our princess would be. Taylor Swift. I don't expect him to funk a pig to save Taylor Swift, because when he does that, then somebody else kidnaps somebody else and they ask for something different. You know what I'm saying? So it opens up a door. So there's something to be said for that policy as well, because when you ask for one thing, then you can ask for the world. And, where does it stop? Where do you stop asking for things? And then it just opens up more people, so that kidnap and ransom just becomes more popular, because suddenly the leader of a free nation, with access to money and wealth and power, will give you whatever you want if you just put it on social media and shame them into doing it. So there's two sides to this. I don't think it's as cut and dry. I think this is a very interesting episode to talk about. And it's, again, a very weird episode to start on, because what you're wanting the audience to think about and talk about. The audio description was fine. There are a couple violent images and stuff throughout, when they kind of raid. There's a point where he thinks that he's going to raid and find the terrorists. That doesn't really happen. There's another body. You sort of find out there's some twists with everything, but mainly you're getting down to the pig fucking, which I think they did as polite of a job as they possibly could with that sequence. So I wasn't looking for a lot, and I didn't really want to know. I didn't want more description than I got. I was like, okay, this was enough. So Yeah. Um, without knowing where the rest of Black Mirror is going, just thinking of this as like a short film, if I was to grade, which is kind of what Black Mirror does, is they kind of, and a lot of anthology series that are like this or structured like this are almost like short films. Um, I'm going to start off by giving Black Mirror Season 1, Episode 1, National Anthem. I'm going to give it a B minus. I don't want to start off too high. I kind of like, I get what it's trying to say, but at the same time, I think there's something that's very uniquely UK about it. And I think if I was a Brit coming from a different perspective, but at the same time, don't you also have misinformation in your news? Is that, or is that like a distinctly American thing? Like, are we the only ones that are idiots walking around out there thinking that, you know, we put stuff in water that turns frogs gay, stuff. There are people who believe shit like that over here. So it's really hard to say that we have reliable information and that people know what's going on. It's pretty easy for somebody to just stand up and say, that's not real, fake news. And then we move on to the next thing, or go down another conspiracy theory rabbit hole. So the American version of this would be completely different, uh, with completely different results. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I'll see you guys on the other side.